Dad, if you disappeared tomorrow, we'd just get a better ATM. That's what my daughter said on my 60th birthday. She didn't laugh alone. My wife Susan chuckled. Her brother Connor slapped his knee like it was the joke of the year. Melissa, his girlfriend, actually clapped. I just stood there, holding the cake knife. 37 candles flickering in front of me. That moment should have broken me, but it didn't. Instead, I set the knife down. "Excuse me," I said calmly. No one noticed when I left the table, walked through the kitchen, and stepped out into the cold March air. Outside, everything felt cleaner, honest. The house behind me glowed with warm light. Inside, they kept laughing, probably at me. I stood on the patio, looking out at the yard I'd mowed every weekend for 15 years. All that effort, all that sacrifice, and yet, to them, I was just the guy who paid the bills. Rachel, the one who called me an ATM, hadn't even looked up from her phone when she said it. She probably posted a selfie with the cake before I even cut it. The decorations Susan put up fluttered in the wind. Streamers, balloons, yellow roses made of frosting. I used to think those things meant something, that birthdays mattered. Apparently, I was wrong. I spent that night in the garage. It's the only part of the house that's still mine. My tools, my order, my space. I opened the filing cabinet and laid it all out. Mortgage, utilities, credit cards, car payments, $5, $400 a month, my take-home $4,800, and they still joked like I was some infinite fountain of money. I stared at the numbers until they stopped looking like bills and started looking like weapons. The next morning, I made Rachel her coffee, same way I've done every morning for years. She shuffled in, already scrolling on her phone. I tried to talk to her about last night. She didn't even glance up. It was a joke. You're overthinking it. Then she walked off, earbuds in. That was it. The final confirmation. I wasn't her father. I was a service, a silent provider. But here's the thing. When you take a man for granted long enough, eventually, he stops giving. They thought I was predictable. They had no idea what was coming. By Monday, things went back to normal. Or, I should say, their version of normal. Rachel was back to her usual rhythm. Late mornings, headphones in, phone glued to her palm. Susan was meal prepping, slicing bell peppers with machine-like focus, her back to me while I stood in the kitchen doorway. "Can we talk?" I asked. "I'm listening," she said, not turning around. It's about what Rachel said, and how everyone laughed. She paused just long enough to make me think she might care, then kept chopping. Honey, you're being too sensitive. Rachel's young. She doesn't mean half the things she says. She's 20. Susan, not 12. Susan finally looked at me. Her face wasn't angry, just tired. You're reading too much into it. We appreciate everything you do, everything I do, not who I am. I swallowed hard. So I'm just a paycheck. Your stability, security, that's important. I nodded. But inside, something was changing. She thought she was comforting me. She had no idea she'd just confirmed everything I feared. I walked out to the garage again. That was the only place I could still breathe. Everything was exactly where I left it, wrenches aligned, invoices filed, floor clean. I opened the drawer with our financial records and spread them across my workbench. Credit cards, utility bills, car loans, all of it. I did the math again. Mortgage, $2, $100. Utilities, $350. Car payments, $850. Groceries, insurance, extras, easily another $1,000. We were running a deficit every month, and they had no clue. They just swiped cards and assumed I'd figure it out. I always did. But now, I didn't want to. That night, after they went to bed, I opened my laptop, typed one phrase into the search bar: how to disappear without a trace. Thousands of results. Some were clearly fiction, but others, step-by-step guides. New bank accounts. Apartments that don't ask questions. Cash-only transitions. Anonymous prepaid cards. For the first time in years, I felt alert, focused. Like an engineer solving a problem, I pulled out a notebook and started making lists. First, move money. Second, secure documents. Third, find a temporary place to live. This wasn't revenge. This was proof. Proof that the man they'd taken for granted was the one holding their entire life together. Back upstairs. The house was quiet. Susan was asleep, arm resting on my side of the bed. Rachel's door was shut, soft music leaking through the walls. I stood there for a long time. They didn't know it yet, but their world was already shifting beneath them. New accounts, fake names, and my first steps into a life they can't control. By Wednesday, I had the first phase in motion. I walked into First National Bank, somewhere Susan had never banked, and opened a new account under my legal name, but with no joint access. I told the young woman at the desk I wanted more privacy in my finances. She smiled like I was buying Susan a surprise vacation. If only she knew. By noon, I'd moved $800,000 from a savings account Susan had forgotten even existed. That night, I visited a 24-hour convenience store off 8 Mile and bought 3 prepaid debit cards, each loaded with $500 paid in cash. Nobody blinked. That's what surprised me most. Disappearing, it turned out, was easier than being seen. The next day, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. I packed a duffel bag with some basic clothes and drove 2 hours north to Lansing. Avoided highways, no toll roads, just back roads and silence. In Lansing, I found a small studio furnished, no questions asked. The landlord didn't care about my credit, just wanted cash up front. I handed him the deposit and the first 3 months. Name on the lease, Harold Walker. Close enough to remember, far enough to disappear. The apartment was tiny. 1 window, a Murphy bed, no pictures on the walls. It was perfect. I was building a life where no one could reach me. Not Susan, not Rachel, not the mortgage company. Back home, they still hadn't noticed anything. Rachel posted another filtered selfie in the kitchen. Mug in hand. Caption: morning brew. Thanks, Dad. She had no idea she was sipping on her last free coffee. Friday. I sat at my garage workbench one last time. Printed out 37 years of sacrifice. Statements, bills, overtime logs. A record of everything I'd done to keep our life afloat. The numbers spoke for themselves. Rachel averaged $1,400 a month on clothes, cosmetics, and entertainment. Susan, another $800 on house projects and lunch dates. Together, they consumed 90% of my income. Without ever asking where it came from, I stuffed the papers into a plain manila envelope. No return address, no note, just truth. I'd send it once I was gone. Let the numbers speak louder than any goodbye. That night, I stood at the kitchen table, same place I'd eaten thousands of meals. I left my phone next to the note. 3 lines, written in my own hand. Gone to find myself. Don't know when I'll return. John. Then I walked out the front door. The silence followed me. No one called after me. No footsteps behind me. Just the steady hum of a house that thought it no longer needed me. Utilities start failing. Rachel panics. And the house of cards finally begins to fall. By Tuesday morning, they'd found the note. I knew, because Susan's Facebook status popped up at 8:47 a.m. Anyone know where John might be? He left a strange note and didn't come home from work. Starting to worry. The comments rolled in fast, friends, neighbors, relatives. Most weren't concerned. Just curious. Probably just needed a break. Guys get weird when they hit 60. Midlife crisis. He'll come back once he cools off. Nobody understood what had actually happened. They didn't realize the ground beneath them was already crumbling. By Thursday, the first payment failed. The electric bill bounced. The system tried to auto-withdraw, just like always. But the account was nearly empty. I'd left just enough to keep up appearances, nothing more. Susan posted again, having some banking issues. Anyone know why automatic payments might not be working? More clueless comments. Technology's a mess. Try restarting the app. Nobody mentioned me. Rachel, meanwhile, was still turning my absence into content. She posted a selfie with a dramatic frown. Captioned Dad left to go find himself. Menschen are exhausting. Dozens of likes, friends laughing in the comments. To her, this was still a joke. A weird little family hiccup. But that wouldn't last. By the weekend, the consequences started to feel real. On Friday morning, a Detroit Edison truck pulled into our driveway. I watched from my car, parked half a block away, coffee in hand, sunglasses on. The worker didn't hesitate, just walked straight to the meter. Susan ran out in her robe, coffee sloshing, panic rising. Even from a distance, I could see her pleading. But rules were rules. No payment. No power. The lights went out at 9:04 a.m. No more fridge hum. No more charged phones. Just silence. Rachel's Instagram post that afternoon was different. A photo of a dark kitchen. Caption: Does anyone know how to get a power company to listen? Ours just shut us off. What the hell? For the first time, she didn't sound smug, just lost. That evening, Connor and Melissa pulled into the driveway. Emergency family meeting. I figured they stayed for an hour. Raised voices behind closed doors. When they left, no hugs, no solutions, just slammed car doors and silence. I watched it all unfold like a slow collapse. And still, no one mentioned me by name. As if saying it would give me power. They still thought I was hiding. They didn't understand I wasn't lost. I was watching. The unraveling accelerates. Jobs, desperation, and a truth bomb that changes everything. By the end of that second week, the house was barely holding together. Susan was now behind on everything: mortgage, internet, car insurance. The bank had mailed a warning notice. I watched from across the street as she opened it on the porch. Her face dropped. She sat down right there, in her robe, and just stared. Rachel's Instagram feed had gone quiet. No more selfies, no more sarcastic captions. Then, one morning, a new post. Anyone hiring barista? retail, anything. Just need a paycheck. Attached was a picture of her resume. Simple, plain, no filters, no emojis. That was the first sign that something was changing. The next day, I watched her walk into a coffee shop, downtown, grind coffee. She was nervous, clutching her phone, jacket wrinkled. An hour later, she walked out with a uniform in hand, and for the first time since I left, she looked grounded. Over the next week, I made a habit of stopping by, not as her father, as a quiet customer in the back corner. Glasses, ball cap, cup of black coffee. She didn't recognize me, but I recognized the girl behind the counter. She smiled at customers. She apologized when she made mistakes. She remade drinks without rolling her eyes, and when she was yelled at by a man in a suit, she stayed calm. "Let me fix that for you, sir," she said. Voice steady. No sarcasm, no attitude. I sat there, watching, wondering if this was the same girl who once called me an ATM. Meanwhile, Susan was breaking down piece by piece. The cable went next, then the internet. She pawned jewelry, some of it gifts I gave her 20 years ago, at one shop. I stood just 2 aisles away. She didn't see me. She was too focused on convincing the clerk that her earrings were worth more than $50. That night, she posted, "Does anyone know of emergency rental assistance? Need temporary help? DM me." The replies were fewer now. The audience was shrinking. Friends didn't know what to say anymore. I knew they'd reached their limit, so I mailed it. A thick envelope. No return address. Inside, every statement, every dollar earned, every dollar spent, a record of 37 years of quiet sacrifice. On top, I typed one sentence. "Maybe now you'll understand what value actually means." By Tuesday morning, Rachel had posted again. A photo of their kitchen table. The envelope. Contents spread wide. Caption: "I had no idea. I'm sorry. Dad, if you see this, please come home." For once, the comments weren't jokes. They were apologies, empathy, and silence. The day after, Rachel posted the picture of my financial records. Things shifted. Her next photo wasn't filtered or curated. Just a simple mirror selfie in her coffee shop uniform. Hair tied back, eyes tired, but steady. 3rd week, still learning, but I'm trying. The comments were different now. No one joked. No one called it dramatic. Instead, her friends asked how they could help. A few offered job referrals. Some admitted they'd never worked a day in their lives, and now felt ashamed of it. Rachel was changing. But she wasn't the only one. Susan started applying for jobs. I saw the applications uploaded from a shared computer at the local library. Receptionist, admin assistant, grocery store cashier, jobs she never thought she'd need. I watched her walk into a staffing agency in a worn-out blazer I hadn't seen in years. She sat in the lobby alone, filling out forms with a ballpoint pen. This was the woman who once told me my value was providing stability. Now she was trying to create her own. There was no comfort left, no safety net, just reality. And still, I stayed silent. One night, parked outside their apartment, I watched through the window. They'd moved into a one-bedroom on the east side. It was barely bigger than my old garage. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, flipping through job ads. Susan was doing dishes, no dishwasher now, just hot water and sore hands. They looked smaller, tired, but not broken, and for the first time in years, they looked like a team. No phone screens between them, no invisible walls. Something was changing, and then it broke. June 15th, 2:47 a.m. A video appeared on Rachel's Instagram. No filter, no smile, just her, sitting in the bathroom, eyes swollen from crying, wearing her grind coffee apron. "Dad," she began, voice shaking. "Wherever you are, I need you to see this." She looked straight into the camera, and I leaned in closer, watching from the corner table of the same coffee shop where she worked. "I know you probably hate me for what I said on your birthday. I called you an ATM." I laughed. We all did. "But you were never just that. You were the man who fixed my bike, who made pancakes on Saturdays, who stayed up doing math homework even when you had 5A shifts." She wiped her nose with her sleeve. "I didn't get it. I didn't see how much you carried until you weren't there to carry it anymore. We lost the house, the car. I've been working double shifts. My feet hurt all the time, but I get it now. Dad, I finally get it." She paused, voice breaking. "I don't care about money, or the mortgage, or the power bill. I just want my father back. Not because we need help, because I miss you. I miss you." She ended the video with one sentence. "Please come home." "Daddy?" It was the first time she'd called me that since she was 12. I watched the video 3 times in that booth. Then again, sitting in my car, then once more in the dark of my apartment, alone. There was no bitterness in her voice, no guilt trip, no manipulation, just pain and growth, and something I thought I'd never see again: humility. Susan commented beneath the video later that morning, "John, if you're seeing this, we understand now. You were never just our safety net. You were our foundation. Please come home. We're sorry. No emojis. No hashtags. Just a raw plea. Not for help. For connection. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a father again. One final step. A reunion at the coffee shop, and a new kind of family rebuilt, not replaced. 2 weeks passed after Rachel's video. I didn't reply. I didn't show up. But every morning, I watched it again. That same cracked voice, those swollen eyes, that simple sentence, I miss you, Daddy. It stopped being about proving a point. The lesson had landed. But the silence, it had outlived its purpose. So I drove south, back toward Detroit, toward the life I left behind, but not to fix it. I was done fixing. I wanted to know if the people I loved were still there beneath the versions of them that once took me for granted. It was a Thursday afternoon when I walked into Grind Coffee. New management had taken over. Brighter walls, better music, same espresso machine, same corner table where I'd once watched my daughter from behind sunglasses. This time, no disguise. Rachel was at the counter, focused on a latte order. Hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, face calm and focused. She looked steady, lighter. Not in the carefree way she used to be, but in the grounded way that comes from falling and standing back up. I sat at a small table near the counter. She didn't notice me at first. She was too busy working. But then she turned, paused, and locked eyes with me. She blinked, like she didn't quite believe it. Then she whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear, Dad. I nodded once. Her knees almost buckled. She rushed over, dropped the coffee pot on the counter, and sat across from me without asking. No words at first, just tears. Silent, stunned tears. Then she exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 months. I thought I'd never see you again, she whispered. I was always watching. I said, I just needed you to see what I'd been carrying. I do, she said quickly. I see it now. Everything. We sat like that for a while. Quiet. No need to rehash the past, because it had already spoken for itself. Her manager, a kind-looking woman in her 50s, walked by and gave her a gentle nod. Take your break. Rachel? Family comes first. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. No apology could undo everything. But that wasn't the point. This wasn't about punishment. It was about growth. And sitting across from me now wasn't the girl who'd once joked about my worth. It was a woman who knew it. Later that evening, we went to see Susan. She opened the apartment door and froze, Her hand trembled against the frame. Then she stepped aside without a word and let me in. No speeches, no drama. We sat on the worn-out couch and just existed for a while, together. She told me about the interviews, the part-time gig she'd picked up. She told me she hadn't expected to survive those 3 months, but was glad she had. Not because it was easy, because it showed her who she was when comfort vanished. I wish it hadn't taken this to understand, she said. Sometimes we don't see clearly until the lights go out. I replied. We're not the same family we were before. The house is gone. The bank account is smaller. But the silence that used to hang between us is gone too. Now we talk. Really talk. We've started therapy together, not to relive the pain, but to understand it. Rachel still works at Grind. Susan works weekends at a nonprofit now, helping other families manage finances. And me, I'm taking fewer hours, walking more, living slower, still present, still a father, but no longer just the ATM. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever been reduced to a role instead of a person, let this be your reminder. Your silence has power, but your return, that's what rewrites the ending. So before you disappear, make sure they're ready to listen. And if they are, come home. If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell someone thank you today before they're gone. And if you are that someone who left, know this: it's never too late to come back.